The room buzzed with excitement as people filled the chairs and lined the walls. It was the day of the annual community talent show, an event that many in the neighborhood looked forward to. Children, teenagers, and even a few adults were ready to show off their skills. Some were nervous, others confident, and a few were simply there for fun. But in the corner of the room, a small boy sat quietly, watching everyone else with wide, careful eyes. His clothes were old, a little too big in some places, and his shoes were scuffed from months of wear. He had a worn backpack by his side, and he clutched it tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping him safe. The boy's name was never really important to the people around him. Most of them noticed only that he looked poor, quiet, and out of place. Whispers traveled across the room when he walked past, soft giggles following him as if his presence alone were funny. The other children had fancy costumes, shiny shoes, and practiced smiles. They seemed to glide across the stage with confidence, while he shuffled along the side, unsure where to go. He carried something that most people didn't notice at first. A small music notebook, filled with sheets of compositions and notes he had written himself. He had been practicing piano for years in secret, using a second-hand keyboard that his neighbor had lent him. Every evening, after everyone else was asleep, he would play by the dim light of a single lamp, losing himself in the music. It was the only place he felt safe, the only world where he was not laughed at or overlooked. Today, the boy was finally going to perform in front of a real audience, and the thought made his stomach twist. He had never played in front of so many people. The talent show was held in the school auditorium, and while he had performed for his family at home, this was different. Hundreds of eyes would be on him. Some would expect him to fail, some would probably snicker at his clothes, and others might simply ignore him. But he had practiced every day for this moment, and the music inside him felt ready to flow out. As he waited backstage, he watched the other performers take the stage. A girl sang a pop song, and the crowd clapped politely. A boy performed a juggling act, drawing cheers from a few enthusiastic parents. Each act seemed to end with applause and smiles, while he sat nervously, trying to calm the rapid beating of his heart. He held the notebook tightly, feeling the smooth paper against his fingers. It was a reminder of all the hours he had spent alone, learning, practicing, and dreaming. When his name was called, he froze for a moment. His legs felt heavy, and his hands shook slightly. The audience's murmurs grew louder as people noticed him stepping forward. A few children giggled, whispering to each other. Some of the adults looked over their glasses, raising eyebrows at the sight of a boy in such tattered clothes. He heard their laughter and felt a flush of embarrassment creeping up his cheeks. His first instinct was to run back, to hide somewhere quiet. But then he remembered the nights spent practicing, the songs he had poured his heart into. He had waited for this chance for years, and he would not let fear take it away. He walked slowly to the piano, each step deliberate, his shoes scuffing against the wooden floor. The audience continued to whisper, some chuckling openly at the sight of the poor kid. He paused at the piano, his fingers hovering over the keys. The bright stage lights made his eyes squint, but he could see the black and white keys clearly. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of every lesson learned, every song played, and every note written in his notebook. See, the room buzzed with excitement as people filled the chairs and lined the walls. It was the day of the annual community talent show, an event that many in the neighborhood looked forward to. Children, teenagers, and even a few adults were ready to show off their skills. Some were nervous, others confident, and a few were simply there for fun. But in the corner of the room, a small boy sat quietly, watching everyone else with wide, careful eyes. His clothes were old, a little too big in some places, and his shoes were scuffed from months of wear. He had a worn backpack by his side, and he clutched it tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping him safe. The boy's name was never really important to the people around him. Most of them noticed only that he looked poor, quiet, and out of place. Whispers traveled across the room when he walked past, soft giggles following him as if his presence alone were funny. The other children had fancy costumes, shiny shoes, and practiced smiles. They seemed to glide across the stage with confidence, while he shuffled along the side, unsure where to go. He carried something that most people didn't notice at first. A small music notebook, filled with sheets of compositions and notes he had written himself. He had been practicing piano for years in secret, using a second-hand keyboard that his neighbor had lent him. Every evening, after everyone else was asleep, he would play by the dim light of a single lamp, losing himself in the music. It was the only place he felt safe, the only world where he was not laughed at or overlooked. Today, the boy was finally going to perform in front of a real audience, and the thought made his stomach twist. He had never played in front of so many people. The talent show was held in the school auditorium, and while he had performed for his family at home, this was different. Hundreds of eyes would be on him. Some would expect him to fail, some would probably snicker at his clothes, and others might simply ignore him. But he had practiced every day for this moment, and the music inside him felt ready to flow out. As he waited backstage, he watched the other performers take the stage. A girl sang a pop song, and the crowd clapped politely. A boy performed a juggling act, drawing cheers from a few enthusiastic parents. Each act seemed to end with applause and smiles, while he sat nervously, trying to calm the rapid beating of his heart. He held the notebook tightly, feeling the smooth paper against his fingers. It was a reminder of all the hours he had spent alone, learning, practicing, and dreaming. When his name was called, he froze for a moment. His legs felt heavy, and his hands shook slightly. The audience's murmurs grew louder as people noticed him stepping forward. A few children giggled, whispering to each other. Some of the adults looked over their glasses, raising eyebrows at the sight of a boy in such tattered clothes. He heard their laughter and felt a flush of embarrassment creeping up his cheeks. His first instinct was to run back, to hide somewhere quiet. But then he remembered the nights spent practicing, the songs he had poured his heart into. He had waited for this chance for years, and he would not let fear take it away. He walked slowly to the piano, each step deliberate, his shoes scuffing against the wooden floor. The audience continued to whisper, some chuckling openly at the sight of the poor kid. He paused at the piano, his fingers hovering over the keys. The bright stage lights made his eyes squint, but he could see the black and white keys clearly. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of every lesson learned, every song played, and every note written in his notebook. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The laughter and whispers faded slightly as the boy placed his fingers gently on the keys. He closed his eyes and let the first notes flow out. They were soft, delicate, and precise. At first, a few people in the audience seemed unsure what to make of it. The whispers continued, but they began to die down as the music grew stronger. His fingers danced over the keys with a skill that seemed impossible for someone so young. The notes carried emotion, telling a story without words, capturing the attention of everyone in the room. Some audience members leaned forward in their seats, curious now, their skepticism replaced by surprise. The boy's music was different from anything they had expected. There was passion in every note, a depth that spoke of countless hours of practice and dedication. Even those who had been laughing moments ago found themselves quiet, unable to look away. The boy was no longer just the poor kid on stage. He was a musician, a storyteller, and a presence that could not be ignored. Backstage, a few of the other performers watched in awe. They had come expecting an easy act to outshine, but what they saw was something extraordinary. Whispers of admiration began to circulate quietly, unnoticed by the boy, who was completely absorbed in his music. Every chord seemed to reach into the hearts of the listeners, weaving a spell of wonder and amazement. He did not think about the audience, the laughter, or the judgment. All that mattered was the piano and the music flowing from his soul. As the first part of his performance ended, there was a brief pause, a moment where time seemed to hang in the air. The audience, once ready to mock, now sat in stunned silence. Some blinked rapidly, trying to comprehend what they had just heard. The boy took another breath, his fingers poised for the next sequence. He felt the energy of the room shift, the doubt melting away, replaced by curiosity and awe. For the first time he felt seen, not for his clothes, not for his quiet demeanor, but for the music he carried within him. He began the next piece, more complex and powerful than the first. The music swelled and fell, sometimes soft and haunting, other times bold and triumphant. Each note told a story of struggle, hope, and determination. The audience was captivated, leaning forward, completely absorbed. Even the children who had giggled moments ago now sat with wide eyes, mouths slightly open, unable to hide their amazement. The boy played as if the piano were an extension of his own being, each motion precise, yet filled with feeling. Some of the adults in the audience felt tears prick at their eyes. They could sense the depth of emotion, the honesty and rawness in the performance. It was more than music. It was a life story being told through sound. The boy did not stop to notice the effect he was having. He did not need to. He was lost in the music, in the joy of sharing something so personal with others. For him, the stage was no longer intimidating. It was a place where he belonged, a space where he could finally be recognized for his talent and hard work. As the piece drew to a close, the room remained silent for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the audience. A few people clapped hesitantly at first, unsure if they should break the spell. But soon, the clapping grew louder, until it became a full, thunderous applause. People stood, cheering, and some wiped tears from their eyes. The boy opened his eyes and looked up, seeing the faces of those who had doubted him now filled with admiration. He felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of pride and relief that he had never experienced before. The first performance was over, but its impact lingered in the room. The boy stepped back from the piano, breathing heavily, a small smile on his face. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel proud, to acknowledge that all those hours of practice, all the sacrifices, and all the moments of doubt had led to this moment. He had faced the laughter and turned it into awe. He had shown everyone that talent and dedication could shine, no matter where someone came from or what they looked like. And as he walked off the stage, the applause still echoing in his ears, he knew this was only the beginning of a story that would change his life forever. Backstage, the boy's hands still trembled slightly as he wiped them on his worn pants. The first piece had been a success, but he knew the next one would be even harder. He had chosen a more complicated composition, one that had taken him months to master. It was a piece full of rapid runs, dramatic pauses, and delicate nuances that could either amaze the audience or expose every flaw. He sat quietly, taking slow breaths, trying to calm his racing heart. Around him, other performers were packing up or preparing to go on, but none seemed to notice him. He was small, quiet, and determined to remain focused on the piano rather than the chatter of the room. He glanced at the notebook once more, the pages filled with careful markings, reminders to hit certain notes, and subtle instructions for dynamics and phrasing. Each mark represented hours of practice, moments of frustration, and breakthroughs that had come late at night when no one was watching. The boy's eyes lingered on the notes, and he felt a familiar warmth of comfort. Music had always been his safe place, a world where nothing could mock or judge him. He remembered how he would sit by the small window in his room, letting the moonlight fall on the keys of his old keyboard, and lose himself in the melodies he created. Those quiet nights had prepared him for this moment. The announcer called his name again, signaling that it was time to return to the stage. The boy felt a familiar knot of nerves tighten in his stomach, but he stood up, clutching the notebook close to his chest. As he walked back out, the audience's attention shifted to him once more. Some people who had applauded moments ago now watched with curiosity, wondering if the next piece would be as impressive. A few of the children whispered among themselves, amazed that the boy had played so beautifully the first time. The adults, too, had changed their expressions from doubt to cautious interest. The boy felt the weight of their expectations, but instead of being frightened, he focused that energy on the piano waiting for him. He approached the keys and sat down, his fingers hovering above them. The lights of the stage shone down, making the piano shine in the center of the room. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly, centering himself. This was his moment, his chance to show not just skill, but the depth of emotion that music could convey. The room seemed to quiet even further, as if everyone sensed that something extraordinary was about to happen. The first notes of the second piece were soft, almost whispering. The audience leaned in, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The boy's hands moved with confidence, each finger striking a note with precision and care. The music told a story without words, a story of struggle and hope that resonated with everyone listening. His fingers danced across the keys, creating a tapestry of sound that seemed impossible for someone his age and experience to produce. Each chord, each transition, carried emotion that touched the hearts of those watching. The audience could feel the passion, the years of silent dedication that had gone into this performance. Some of the people who had chuckled at his appearance earlier now sat in stunned silence. They could hardly believe what they were hearing. The music was complex, full of layers and subtle shifts in tone that revealed a maturity far beyond his years. The boy played with his eyes sometimes closed, letting the music guide him rather than thinking about the next note. His concentration was absolute, his connection to the piano and the audience undeniable. The piece grew in intensity, with fast runs and powerful chords that filled the room. The boy's small frame seemed almost at odds with the force of the music he was producing. The audience was captivated. Parents and teachers alike found themselves leaning forward, unable to look away. Even the children who had whispered and laughed now sat with wide eyes, spellbound by the performance. The boy's music painted pictures in their minds, telling stories of perseverance, dreams, and triumph over challenges. He played as though he were sharing his own life experiences, translating every emotion he had ever felt into sound. A few of the audience members were moved to tears. The music was not just technically impressive. It carried an emotional weight that resonated deeply. They could feel the boy's dedication, the hours he had spent alone perfecting each note, and the courage it took to perform in front of a crowd that had initially doubted him. It was as if the piano itself were speaking, expressing truths that words could never capture. The boy, lost in his music, felt a sense of freedom and joy unlike anything he had experienced before. The stage was no longer intimidating. It was a sanctuary where he could be fully himself. As the piece continued, the boy began to add small improvisations, subtle touches that showcased not only his skill, but also his creativity. The audience noticed these moments and responded with soft murmurs of appreciation. Some exchanged glances, acknowledging the remarkable talent before them. The boy had transformed from the quiet, poor kid at the beginning of the show into a performer commanding the attention and respect of everyone in the room. The music reached its climax, a powerful section that combined speed, emotion, and technical mastery. The audience was completely absorbed, their earlier doubts entirely forgotten. Each note struck with precision, each chord resonated with emotion, creating a wave of sound that seemed to envelop the room. The boy's fingers moved faster, yet with control and grace, as if he and the piano were one entity. The energy in the room was electric. People could hardly breathe, waiting for the final notes that would bring the piece to its conclusion. Finally, the last note lingered in the air, soft and fading, leaving a silence that seemed almost tangible. The audience sat frozen for a moment, absorbing what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began to rise, quiet at first, then growing louder, until it became a powerful, thunderous ovation. People stood, clapping and cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes, others smiling in disbelief. The boy looked up, his heart pounding, as he saw the faces of the audience filled with admiration and respect. For the first time in his life, he felt completely seen for who he truly was. Backstage, other performers watched in awe, whispering to each other about the incredible talent they had just witnessed. The boy walked off the stage, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and happiness. He knew that the journey ahead would still be difficult, but this moment had given him a sense of validation and confidence that he had never experienced before. The applause continued as he took a deep breath, realizing that his music had the power to move people, to connect hearts, and to inspire hope. He returned to his seat, still catching his breath, feeling the adrenaline slowly ebb away. The notebook was still in his hands, but now it felt different, lighter, almost like a symbol of triumph rather than the weight of preparation. Around him, people talked excitedly about his performance, many expressing disbelief at how a small boy with worn clothes could play with such mastery. Some came forward to offer kind words, while others simply nodded in silent admiration. It was a moment of recognition, a turning point in his life that he would remember forever. As the next performers took the stage, the boy felt a sense of calm satisfaction. He had faced the laughter and doubt, transformed it into something beautiful, and shared a piece of his soul with the world. The experience had changed him, giving him confidence and a sense of belonging he had never known. The music had not only captured the audience's attention but had also allowed him to see the value of his own dedication and perseverance. In that moment, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, his passion and talent could carry him forward, opening doors and inspiring others along the way. After the second piece, the boy returned to his seat, feeling a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. His fingers ached slightly from the intensity of the performance, but the satisfaction that filled him outweighed any discomfort. Around him, the audience continued to talk in low voices, clearly impressed and moved by what they had witnessed. Some whispered to their neighbors, comparing the boy's talent to professional musicians, while others simply shook their heads in awe. For the first time, the boy felt a connection to a group of people outside his small world, and it was a feeling that warmed him deeply. As he rested, he reflected on how far he had come. The path to this stage had not been easy. There had been moments of doubt, times when he felt like giving up, nights when he cried in frustration because his fingers refused to move as he wanted. Yet each of those struggles had led to this moment. Every late-night practice, every broken note, and every small victory had built the foundation for the performance he had just given. Music had been his companion through loneliness, his source of hope when life felt difficult, and now it was the bridge connecting him to the world outside his home. The announcer introduced the next performers, and the boy watched quietly, paying attention to their skills while mentally preparing for the third piece he had chosen. This piece was the most personal of all, one he had written himself. It was a composition that reflected his life story, the struggles, the dreams, and the silent determination that had guided him through years of hardship. It was bold, expressive, and emotional, requiring not just technical skill but also courage to share a piece of his heart with strangers. When his name was called again, the boy stood up, feeling the familiar knot of nerves in his stomach. He walked toward the piano, this time with a newfound sense of confidence. The audience was ready, their anticipation clear in the way they leaned forward in their seats. He could feel their eyes on him, but rather than fear, he felt a sense of purpose. He had a story to tell, a message to convey through music, and nothing could stop him now. He sat down at the piano and opened his notebook to the sheet of his original composition. The first notes flowed from his fingers like a river, soft and delicate at first, gradually building into a melody that captured the essence of his journey. The audience fell silent, mesmerized by the beauty and emotion of the music. Every chord, every pause, seemed to carry meaning beyond the notes themselves. The boy played not for applause, not for recognition, but because it was the only way he could express what he felt inside. The music told a story of a young boy growing up in a world that often overlooked him. It spoke of long nights of practice with a borrowed keyboard, of dreams nurtured in silence, and of the courage it took to face judgment and ridicule. Each note reflected his determination, each crescendo symbolized his hope, and each gentle passage conveyed the tenderness he carried despite hardships. The audience could sense the authenticity in his playing, and their eyes were fixed on him, fully engaged in the story unfolding before them. As the piece progressed, the boy's confidence grew. He added small embellishments, subtle flourishes that enhanced the emotional impact of the music. His hands moved effortlessly, yet every motion was purposeful, precise, and expressive. The audience was captivated. Some held their breath, others closed their eyes, allowing themselves to be transported into the world the boy was creating through sound. Even the skeptics, those who had once laughed at his appearance, were now silent, their attention completely captured. The music built to a powerful climax, each note resonating with intensity and passion. The boy's emotions poured into every chord, and the room seemed to vibrate with the energy he created. People felt the story he was telling, the struggles, the triumphs, and the hope for a better future. It was a performance that went beyond talent. It was an experience, a journey that everyone in the room could feel deeply. The boy's original composition was not just a display of skill, but a window into his soul, a message that could touch hearts and inspire courage. Some audience members found tears in their eyes as the music reached its peak. They could sense the years of effort, the pain, and the dreams that had led to this moment. The boy had transformed from a quiet, overlooked child into a powerful storyteller whose words were the notes of the piano. The room was filled with awe, admiration, and a profound respect for the young musician who had dared to share his truth so openly. As the final notes faded, there was a brief, suspended silence. The audience was absorbing what they had just experienced, realizing the depth of the performance. Then, slowly, applause began, growing louder and more enthusiastic with each passing second. People stood, cheering, clapping, and some even whistling in amazement. The boy looked up, his heart pounding, and saw the faces of those around him filled with wonder and appreciation. It was a moment of validation and connection he had never known before. Backstage, teachers, parents, and fellow performers were whispering in disbelief. They could not believe the talent and emotion the boy had displayed. Some approached him cautiously, offering compliments and words of encouragement. Others simply shook their heads in silent admiration, recognizing the extraordinary gift they had just witnessed. The boy felt a mixture of humility and pride, knowing that he had shared something deeply personal and had touched the hearts of so many people. As he left the stage for the final time in that round, he felt a sense of completeness. The music had told his story, expressed his emotions, and connected him to the audience in a way he had never imagined. The applause and admiration were overwhelming, yet he remained grounded, understanding that the true reward was the ability to share his music and make people feel. The experience had strengthened his confidence, reinforced his dedication, and inspired him to continue pursuing his passion no matter the obstacles. Sitting quietly after the performance, the boy reflected on how far he had come. The path had been difficult, filled with challenges and doubts, but each step had led him to this stage. The audience had seen his talent, but more importantly, they had seen his heart. The boy realized that music was not just a skill or a hobby. It was a bridge between him and the world, a way to communicate, connect, and inspire. In that moment, he knew that his journey was only beginning, and that the power of music would guide him through the challenges and triumphs that lay ahead. The applause from the audience still echoed in the boy's ears as he returned backstage. His body was tired from the intense performance, but his mind was alive with a mix of excitement, relief, and pride. For the first time, he felt the recognition of his talent from people beyond his family and a few close friends. It was a feeling that filled him with warmth and validation. He sat quietly, trying to calm his racing heart, while the other performers looked on with admiration and curiosity. Some whispered to each other, sharing their amazement at what they had just witnessed. The boy reflected on how much had changed for him in just a short period. He had walked onto the stage feeling nervous, almost invisible, and had faced the skepticism and laughter of the audience. Yet through it all, he had let his music speak, transforming doubt into wonder and ridicule into respect. The experience had been transformative. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. Music had given him that courage, and in return, it had opened doors he had never imagined. As the talent show continued, the boy watched the other performances with a sense of calm satisfaction. He no longer compared himself to anyone or worried about how he looked or how he was perceived. His focus was on the music, on the joy of playing, and on the possibility of inspiring others with his passion. He noticed small details that he had missed before: the nervous glances of other performers, the soft smiles of parents, and the encouragement offered by teachers behind the scenes. All of it seemed to matter less than the connection he had felt with the audience and the piano. The announcer began to introduce a series of special segments, but the boy's attention remained on the piano in the corner of the stage. He could not resist the urge to play, to explore the keys and create something entirely his own. Slowly, he approached the instrument once more, this time without a performance scheduled. He sat down, feeling the familiar weight of his hands on the keys, and began to play softly. The notes flowed gently at first, then grew in confidence and complexity. Even though the audience was engaged with other acts, a few people noticed him and paused to listen. The music that emerged was different from what he had performed earlier. It was experimental, exploratory, and deeply personal. Each note carried a sense of freedom, a breaking away from the constraints of practice and expectation. The boy's fingers moved with grace and intuition, creating harmonies that surprised even him. He played for himself, for the joy of creation, and for the small audience who had gathered unexpectedly to watch. The room was quiet, save for the soft music, and the boy felt a sense of peace he had rarely experienced. As he continued to play, a few adults approached, whispering softly among themselves. Some teachers, who had previously been skeptical, were now clearly impressed, exchanging nods of acknowledgement. The boy's original compositions revealed not just technical skill, but a depth of emotion and creativity that was rare for someone his age. He played without hesitation, allowing his feelings to guide his hands and the music to flow naturally. Each chord resonated with authenticity, and those listening felt the sincerity behind every note. The boy's improvisation began to draw more attention. Some audience members, who had initially been distracted, now paused and leaned closer, captivated by the sound. Parents, teachers, and other performers alike watched quietly, their expressions reflecting surprise, admiration, and inspiration. The boy did not notice their attention. He was entirely immersed in the act of creation, exploring melodies and harmonies that had only existed in his mind until now. It was a moment of pure connection, where the music itself became the bridge between him and the listeners. Time seemed to stand still as he played. Each phrase was deliberate, yet fluid, and the room was filled with a sense of wonder. The boy's music was more than a performance. It was an experience, a journey through emotions and imagination. Those who listened could feel the stories embedded in the notes, the challenges, the small victories, the dreams, and the hopes. It was clear that this was not just practice or talent. It was passion and life woven into sound. The boy's presence, once so quiet and overlooked, had become magnetic through the power of music. As the final notes of his improvisation echoed through the room, there was a moment of silence, almost reverent. The boy slowly lifted his hands from the keys, breathing heavily yet with a glow of satisfaction. The audience, both near and far, began to clap softly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Some people were standing, applauding and cheering, moved by the authenticity and emotion they had witnessed. The boy's face lit up with a quiet smile, a mixture of pride, relief, and joy. He had not played for attention or recognition, yet the response he received was overwhelming. Backstage, teachers and parents approached cautiously, offering words of praise and encouragement. Some asked questions about his practice, his inspiration, and the compositions he had created. The boy answered humbly, explaining his love for music and the quiet hours he had spent learning and experimenting. His story resonated with everyone listening, a tale of dedication, perseverance, and the transformative power of passion. It was a story that inspired hope and admiration, showing that talent and determination could overcome barriers and prejudice. In the days following the talent show, the boy noticed a subtle but significant change in the way people interacted with him. Teachers offered guidance and encouragement, neighbors expressed pride and curiosity, and other children looked at him with newfound respect. The performance had created a ripple effect, altering perceptions and opening doors that had once seemed firmly closed. He continued to practice, driven not just by his own passion, but by the awareness that his music could touch hearts and change minds. The boy also began to realize that his journey was only beginning. There were more stages to play on, more audiences to reach, and more compositions to create. The talent show had been a pivotal moment, but it had also been a stepping stone toward a larger path of growth, learning, and sharing. He carried with him the lessons of courage, patience, and self-belief, understanding that true accomplishment came from persistence and authenticity. The applause and admiration were powerful, but the deeper reward was the knowledge that he had expressed himself fully and honestly. Each time he returned to the piano, whether on stage or in the quiet of his room, the boy felt a sense of purpose. Music was no longer just a private refuge. It was a bridge connecting him to the world, a means to communicate, inspire, and touch lives. He explored new ideas, experimented with melodies, and allowed his creativity to flourish, confident that the skills and emotions he had cultivated could be shared meaningfully. The journey had transformed him, nurturing both talent and character, and instilling a sense of confidence that would guide him in all areas of life. The experience of performing and connecting with an audience had shown the boy the profound impact that passion and dedication could have. It reinforced the importance of perseverance, the value of self-expression, and the power of music to transcend barriers and connect people. He understood that the path forward would still have challenges, but the lessons learned and the recognition received had strengthened his resolve. Each note he played was a reflection of his journey, a testament to the resilience and potential within him. Through these experiences, the boy grew not just as a musician, but as a person. He learned humility, patience, and the significance of sharing one's gifts with others. He discovered that talent was most meaningful when coupled with sincerity and hard work, and that even the smallest gestures of dedication could leave a lasting impact. The talent show had been a turning point, but the true story was ongoing, unfolding with each practice session, each performance, and each connection made through the universal language of music. And with every note he played, the boy carried forward the lessons, dreams, and courage that had brought him to this stage, ready to face whatever came next with determination and hope. The final part of the talent show approached, and the boy felt a calm confidence as he prepared to step onto the stage once more. He had experienced the fear, the doubt, and the surprise of the audience, and he had discovered the power of his music to transform perception and emotion. Now, as he walked toward the piano, he carried with him not just the skills he had practiced for years, but the belief in himself and the understanding that music could convey what words could not. The audience greeted him with applause, more enthusiastic than ever. People had been talking about his previous performances, sharing their amazement and admiration. Teachers, parents, and even the other performers looked at him differently now, with respect and curiosity. The boy felt a warm sense of connection, realizing that he was no longer invisible or underestimated. Each step toward the piano was deliberate, filled with purpose, and his hands no longer shook with nervousness. Instead, they rested lightly on the keys, ready to bring the music to life. He began with a gentle, slow melody, allowing the notes to resonate and fill the room. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the sincerity and emotion behind the music. This piece was a culmination of all that he had learned and felt, combining technical skill with deep personal expression. Each chord reflected years of practice, moments of doubt, and bursts of inspiration that had shaped him as a musician. The music was not only beautiful, but it told a story of perseverance, courage, and the transformative power of dedication. As he continued, the music swelled, incorporating dynamic contrasts that highlighted his ability to blend technique and emotion. The audience could feel the journey embedded in every note. Parents and teachers exchanged glances, some visibly moved to tears, recognizing the extraordinary talent and maturity that this young boy displayed. Even the children in the audience, who had once laughed at his appearance, now watched in awe, understanding that talent and passion could defy expectations. The boy allowed himself moments of improvisation, exploring melodies and harmonies that flowed naturally from his mind and heart. Each phrase was thoughtful yet spontaneous, creating a sense of wonder and anticipation in the room. The music seemed to breathe, rising and falling in rhythm with the emotions it carried. It spoke of challenges overcome, dreams nurtured quietly in the dark, and the joy of sharing something deeply personal with others. The audience responded instinctively, leaning in, holding their breath, or closing their eyes to fully absorb the beauty and emotion. Throughout the performance, the boy remained fully immersed in the music. He did not notice the applause building quietly at first, nor the whispers of admiration spreading through the room. He focused entirely on the piano, letting each note express what he could not say with words. This was more than a performance. It was a conversation between his soul and the audience, a bridge created through sound. The room seemed to vibrate with the energy of his playing, each note touching hearts and inspiring wonder. The climax of the piece approached, and the boy's music became more powerful and expressive. Rapid runs, soaring chords, and delicate flourishes combined to create a masterpiece of emotion and skill. The audience was captivated, some leaning forward, some holding back tears, and some simply sitting in stunned silence. Every note carried a message of hope, courage, and determination, revealing not just technical mastery, but also the depth of feeling that had driven him to this moment. It was a performance that transcended age, appearance, and expectation. As the final chords resonated and slowly faded into silence, the audience was momentarily speechless. Then, the applause began, starting softly and building into a full, thunderous ovation. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and some even shouting words of encouragement. The boy looked up, taking in the faces of those around him, filled with admiration, awe, and respect. He felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had experienced before. It was not just about the applause, but about the connection he had forged with others through his music. Backstage, teachers, parents, and fellow performers approached him, offering congratulations and praise. Some asked questions about his practice, his inspirations, and his compositions. The boy listened humbly, grateful for the recognition, yet he remained grounded. He understood that the true value of his performance was not the applause, but the impact it had on those who listened. The emotion stirred, the inspiration sparked, and the barriers broken by witnessing the talent and heart of someone who had been underestimated. In the days following the talent show, the boy noticed a significant change in how people perceived him. Teachers offered mentorship, neighbors showed increased respect, and peers sought his guidance and friendship. The boy's life had shifted, not because of fame or material reward, but because his dedication, talent, and courage had earned him recognition and trust. He continued to practice daily, refining his skills, creating new compositions, and exploring new possibilities in music. Each session brought him closer to mastery, but also deeper understanding of his own potential and resilience. The boy's journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, self-belief, and the courage to share one's passion. He had faced ridicule and doubt, yet he had allowed his music to speak, and it had transformed perceptions and hearts. The experience reinforced his understanding that success is not merely measured by external approval, but by the integrity, dedication, and authenticity one brings to their craft. He had learned that obstacles could be overcome, expectations surpassed, and dreams realized through consistent effort and belief in oneself. As he continued to play, both on stage and in private, the boy felt a growing sense of purpose. Music had become not only a personal refuge but also a tool to inspire, communicate, and connect. He explored new compositions, experimented with improvisation, and shared his talent with others whenever possible. Each performance, each note, and each audience reaction reinforced the idea that his dedication could make a meaningful difference. The boy knew that this was just the beginning of a lifelong journey of growth, creativity, and connection through music. In reflecting on the talent show, the boy understood the profound lessons it had offered. He had discovered the importance of courage, the value of hard work, and the impact of sharing one's true self with the world. He had faced fear and transformed it into confidence. He had turned ridicule into admiration through the simple, honest act of playing the piano. And most importantly, he had realized that his music had the power to touch hearts, inspire hope, and forge connections that transcended social status, appearance, or age. The boy's story became an example to those who witnessed it, a reminder that talent and perseverance can overcome initial judgment and low expectations. His journey showed that dedication, passion, and authenticity could create extraordinary moments, inspire others, and change the way people see and value one another. The piano, once a tool for private expression, had become a bridge to the world, allowing the boy to share his voice, his story, and his heart. As he continued to grow and pursue his passion, the boy carried forward the lessons, confidence, and connections gained from that pivotal experience. The talent show had been a turning point, but it was only one chapter in a much larger story of perseverance, growth, and the pursuit of dreams. With each note he played, he honored the journey that had brought him to that stage, and he embraced the future with hope, determination, and the knowledge that his music could continue to touch lives in ways words alone never could.